So my kids are about a month into summer vacation and they're fighting, as kids do. And one of the things that my son continuously repeats to my daughter is, I don't care, no one cares, no one cares. And I thought back to how traumatic that kind of thing used to be for me. And I felt, especially as a teenager, like my teenage angst was that I was just so passionate about things. I was passionate about Christianity. I was passionate about friendships. I was passionate about people. I was passionate about all kinds of things I was passionate about. And anyone who didn't care so triggered me and yet so caught my attention at the same time, that I created this kind of lesson for myself there. So I was contemplating this and I was kind of like seeing the synchronicity in it. And I took the kids to the beach, this beach actually. This is why I was inspired to come back here. And we found this frisbee, which I don't know if it's showing mirrored. I don't know what settings my phone is, but it says do not care at all, which is hilarious. And now I see it as like beautiful to it doesn't kill the passion whatsoever. I don't see it as a back and forth, an either or decision. It's so helpful to catch ourselves when we're trying to decide, is it this way or is it this way? Is it that I have this awesome career, or do I focus on spirituality? Do I have a family, or do I focus on... And we cause all kinds of trouble for ourselves, not realizing that the trouble isn't inherent in us having to decide one way or another, but it's the emotional guidance telling us that we don't have to make those either or decisions. There's only this moment, and this moment hones in on and also encompasses everything completely. So, what is identification? Identification is an amazing word because it both means to diagnose something, to find out what the cause of a problem is, or to find out what it is. Or we use the term to know ourselves. What do we identify as? So these two uses of the word really aren't two different things. It's the attempt to know. And because we can't know ourselves as an outside subject, there aren't two of us, we never can identify ourselves. And so often this is where the questions arise. Is it this way or is it this way? Am I this way or am I this way? And when we realize, when those questions come up, that they don't need to be answered, nor can they be answered one way in exclusion of the other, we have a lot more peace of mind and all options open to us. You are already unconditional. You do not need to become unconditional. One of my favorite analogies is stepping outside the character, seeing that one never was the character, and seeing from the perspective of the author. And it's only when we let go of thoughts, assuming that we know, those thoughts of identification, that we know we are that character, and we know exactly how things need to be for the resolution of this, that we can see, or insights seem to flood in when we drop those. Not immediately, not if you need them, but they just seem to fall out of the sky or wash up on the ocean just for your pleasure. And that's all the author writes for, just for your pleasure. It's not that you need them. It's never out of need that any of this is ever realized. None of it matters. It doesn't matter which you choose, as there's no choice, and that's your utter freedom. There's no right answers here. So we're already unconditional. And if you think back to times in your life when you've really suffered, they have nothing to do with what's happening at the time. They're already unconditional and they already don't make sense. And sometimes we see this and we actually judge ourselves harshly for this. This bad thing happened to someone I loved and I felt okay. Kind of like the story I tell about being yelled at for jumping through the sprinklers after my grandfather died in the summer when I was 9 years old, and being told that I couldn't openly have a good time then. When I die, please have a party. Please jump for joy. That's exactly, it's supposed to be a celebration. Now, of course, that does not mean that there's something wrong with us, does not mean that we're unenlightened if we feel emotions. However, there's a distinction in when those emotions are expressed, when we're allowing the resistance to lessen, even when we're in those emotions. Which is why we enjoy sad music, which is why we enjoy stories, which is why there's so much contrast in movies. There are horror movies. There are very, very sad, popular movies. And I noticed how it doesn't have to have anything to do with you. Occasionally when you're feeling off and something needs to be expressed, I watched an interview with somebody who survived the Holocaust, and I felt so much better after. All the synchronicity came out. I cried, I bawled during it, and it was as if something in me had to be expressed. And typically, I find this through journaling or finding out what's wrong in my life, but I'm now finding that it doesn't have to have anything to do with me whatsoever. When you are, as Abraham Hicks says, in the vortex, which is my favorite way of explaining it, when you are the author, when you are seeing clearly, when you are yourself, when there aren't two of you, there isn't one blocking the other, when you're seeing clearly, when you are yourself, it doesn't matter what happens. It's seen through that vantage point, and it's seen as not a hard material problem that we have to come up against. When you're thrilled and you fall down the steps, it's just sensation. When things are going bad and you're taking things upon yourself and continuously taking it upon yourself and you fall down the steps, what did I do to deserve this? Or this is how my life goes, or something. That's the suffering. The suffering has always just been guidance. Like a rumble strip. You don't drive on the rumble strip and curse the person for putting the rumble strip there. You move over. And when we're identifying or trying to identify, so often we put up with that, hating it all the way, but not realizing the intention of the rumble strip, the intention of that guidance. So I'd encourage you, if you're inclined, to journal about this or really inquire. Do negative things end up causing me to feel negative emotions? Or does it have nothing to do whatsoever with what happened, and always in the past has nothing to do with what happened? Now let's be fair. Let's dive in. Let's get into the nitty-gritty. So when I had COVID, was that a fun time? No, not really. Do I want to do that again? No, not really. Was I blissed out sometimes while I had COVID? Yes. Am I blissed out a lot of the time when I'm sick and enjoy how my thoughts don't come as fast? Absolutely, yes. So, do I also have really vague thoughts that sometimes seem to get stuck and be all suffery? Yes. So, like, there's nothing wrong with saying, you don't want to get COVID or COVID sucks or whatever. That's totally fine. However, in the moment, that potential is always there to totally align no matter what. When my grandmother died, I had the most incredible contrasting experiences. Lots of feeling, lots of grief, and lots of connection and absolutely knowing that there weren't borders between us, and this was manifest in this way that absolutely blew everything that I knew about what people were apart. In every single thing that happens, there's so much good that comes out of it. I'm not saying you have to know the purpose. I'm not saying that there's any point. So an author writes a novel and then there's the point at the end where everything's sort of like tied up with a bow. What I'm saying is it's always that point. It's always tied up with a bow, and yet it's the joy of the middle of the plot when you have no idea what's going to happen. Things might look really bad. You have no idea how they're going to work out, and you're in the middle of it. You never wanted it to end. It's like the saddest part of a series you love is when you've read through the whole thing. It's the best of both worlds. It never ends, and yet it always is perfectly concluded without concluding. It's brilliance. I think that sometimes we think that enlightenment is going to be the end of something. It's going to be the end of contrast. And in reality, often experiences that bring us closer only make it more clear what those contrasts are. Like they dial up the volume or the discomfort of that rumble strip, so to speak. Because the rumble strip, the guidance, was never anything that we were avoiding. Again, no exclusion and nothing can be excluded. It was always there for us. And so to hear it loudly is the best, again, possible scenario. So going back to the frisbee that washed up on the beach and the question of caring or not caring and how that fits in with being unconditional. It hit me that caring or not caring, that what is wanted is the unconditional, and that's what already is. So if you imagine how an author feels about a character, that they both fully understand that nothing bad can ever happen to that character, that the character doesn't truly exist, it doesn't truly have beginning or end to it, that even if the character is killed, nothing ever happens to them. They're always going to be the beloved character. And yet the love and the creation that the author pours into that character, they both care and they don't care. It's unconditional. And so you see how we create the conditions in the asking. Do they care? Do they not care? Do I care? Do I not care? Should I do this? Should I do this? Is it this way? Is it this way? Is this food better for me? Is this food better? All of it is creation. All of it is unconditional. And so you both have no idea. We can't put any sort of fixed rules on it whatsoever. And yet with that emotional guidance that already is unconditional, you have crystal clear knowing. Just for the moment. You don't get to take any more than what's needed. And that turns out to be infinity.